everybody. This is Just Ask Julia, where we share tips, trends, insights, and resources to help you transform your career and elevate your success. I am Julia Holian, and I'm going to be leading today's session. We're going to talk about strategies for interviewing in today's market. Now, if you are watching this session live today, we will have a Q&A session after this presentation. So feel free to stay on and ask us questions about today's topic or anything else that's career-oriented, resumes, LinkedIn, networking, bad boss, anything that comes to mind. We are here to help. If you are watching this as a recording, feel free to click the link in the description below and you will be able to sign up for future Just Ask Julia sessions where you can ask us questions live as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk today about three general areas. One, what's kind of new and changing in today's interview process. We're then going to talk about what interviewers are looking for. And then I want to focus on how to stand out and hopefully not burn out in the interview process. So let's dive in. So how the interview landscape has changed or is changing. We are seeing and hearing about a huge rise in automation and AI-driven hiring. I'm sure you're seeing it too, but we are following a lot of different forums where there are recruiters and HR professionals, and they're talking about what's going on in the market. So it's hard on both sides right now. It is hard for a job seeker. It's also hard for the recruiters. The recruiters are posting a job and they are often seeing 300 to 500 people apply on it in a day. As a matter of fact, LinkedIn says that they get 11,000 applications every single minute. Now, of course, that's worldwide, but just the volume of people applying for jobs is huge. At the same time, I want to just let you know, if you are a job seeker, that when you see that number, that huge number that 500 people have already applied, I want you to know that there are bots that are applying. There are a lot of there are organizations that you can kind of pay to take your resume and just apply for you. So there's just a lot of sort of scattershot applying. And a lot of the people who apply are not necessarily qualified. So I tell people, if you see that huge number, don't get thrown off by it. If you are a great candidate for the job, I still want you to go through applying or reaching out to people. There's a lot of different ways I would go about trying to sort of get on the radar of the company. But because of this huge influx of people applying, it is just sort of weighing down the recruiters. So they are looking at new ways that they can use AI and automate some of their processes. And you would think that the applicant tracking systems that they've had for years would do all of this, and it does to an extent, but some of those systems are kind of clunky. And what we're kind of excited about from an AI standpoint is that from their end in that applicant tracking system, that they can make those a lot more sophisticated. So we're going to see a lot of change over the next, I think, 2 years. I think things are going to be drastically different just 2 years from now in terms of what the recruiters and the hiring teams are using on their side of the process. But what does this mean for you? It means that they're going to be using some processes for you or with you that quite frankly take away kind of the human factor of the interview process, at least early on. We are seeing a lot more video interviewing platforms, both live, like Zoom, and one way, and we're going to talk about that. We're also seeing an increase in skills-based assessments. There are a lot more tools out there for that companies use to assess, your qualifications and how well you match up with the job. So keep that in mind. That's really what's coming down the pike. Just for the interview process, 3 things I want to mention. One is that the average number of people that you're probably going to meet in an interview process is going to be like 8 to 15 people. I don't think I've had anybody who's interviewed with fewer than 8 people in an interview process in a long, long time. But that's usually that kind of timeline. And the average time to hire for a company is usually 44 days. I think that is not necessarily equating for like when they post the job all the way through when the person, sits in the seat. But I've seen this stat in multiple places. So if you think about that, it used to be 36 days. If you look at the chart on the left, so back in 2020, it was 36 days for them to hire. It's now up to 44. So the interview process is actually taking longer, which is why they're trying to do more automation and use other tools that will help them flush out who is ready for this job, who's qualified, who do they want to meet with. Now, the third thing that I want to mention is the box down at the bottom. I highly recommend that you all go check out, if you weren't here, you go check out the Just Ask Julia call that we did back in May. It is about what we were seeing in the job market. It's a great companion to today's workshop because I talk a lot about some of the trends that we are seeing and more about the actual interview process, like what to expect each stage. So we're not going to talk about that today because we talked about that in May, but definitely go back and check that out on our YouTube channel. So let's dive into what some of the tools are that we're seeing. And some of these are going to be familiar, and some of them are probably going to be new. So the live video tools, which you already know, we're already on Zoom right now for those of you who are here live. But there's Zoom, there's Microsoft Teams, there's Google Meet, there's a whole bunch of different tools that companies are using to do that live interview via the internet, so a live virtual interview. But what's changing with these platforms is the AI capabilities within them, where they are now using the transcription and summarization tools. They're creating documents out of it. So it used to be that you would be on, say, Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and you would be talking to somebody and people would just be taking their own notes. They're now really using the transcription services and all the different ways that system can look at what was said and summarize that conversation. They're breaking that into different documents. That's how they can share that across the teams that are interviewing. So I think that we're going to continue to see even more capabilities out of those tools. So don't be surprised when you see something pop up that says that AI is, following along in the conversation. I will tell you that I know for Liz and me, when we meet with somebody as one of our clients, we will forward that summary from Zoom to them. You might see if you can actually ask the recruiter or hiring manager or anybody that you're meeting with, since you know it's being transcribed, can you get a copy of that too? There's no reason why you can't ask. They might say yes, they might say no, but it's worth it to maybe ask. Now, the biggest change that we've kind of seen trickling along for the last few years, but I think it's about to really take off, is this one-way interviewing tools. So I've listed a few of them here. Whoops, went too far. What these tools are is where you interview with your computer. So you get a link, and in that link, it says you go onto the site, you put in your information, and then it comes up and it says, okay, we're going to do a virtual interview, and you are talking basically to the camera that's on your computer or adjacent to your computer, and you are answering questions that pop up on the screen, and you're just talking, to the camera. So that's kind of jarring for a lot of people. And I think that's something that people really kind of struggle with. Like, where do I look? Am I looking around? Do I look right at the camera? It's a little jarring. So I put in these 5 logos so you could see them. You might want to go check them out and see what the capabilities are. Sometimes you get a little bit of a demo so you can see what that looks like. But what's interesting from the recruiter side of things is not only will these do a video recording of you answering the questions that pop up on the screen, but it does some analytics that it gives back to that recruiter or the hiring manager or the HR team about your vocal tone, your facial expression. Like it can tell them if you seemed nervous, if you spoke fast, if you spoke slowly, how you sounded. I'm going to be doing a deep dive on trying to figure out a little bit more of these because we don't actually use them in-house for us. But you're going to see this a lot more, especially on the front end of interviews. I'm hearing of clients saying that before they even talk to a recruiter, they're getting this first, or they talk to the recruiter and this is the next step. So we're going to start to see probably a lot more of this. There are other tools that are being used as well. So there are a lot of assessments that companies are starting to use. And again, they're using these early on because they are trying to flush out who they think is qualified for the job before they actually put them in front of the hiring manager. So we have technical tools like HackerRank, CodeSignal, Codility. These have coding challenges, technical assessments, programming languages, and all of that. There's aptitude like Test Gorilla, eSkill, Vervo. These are assessments that can like cover all sorts of different professions and industries. Also, some of them will do customized for whoever the client is that's ordered this up. So they have about 800 assessments, many of them already built in. That could be sales, accounting and finance, marketing, just runs the gamut. So you're going to possibly see a lot more of these as well. And then lastly, what we've seen for a long, long time, which won't be a surprise to many of you, is that there are the soft skill assessments out there. The Clifton Strengths, which many of you know, I'm a Gallup certified Clifton Strengths coach. There's DISC, there's Pymetrics. There's probably 30 different assessment type tools out there. That's more about like, oops, I keep going too fast. It's more about like your personality and your decision-making type, your communication type. And those tools are not like a right or a wrong, where I think the technical and the aptitude tools can be a little bit more of like really testing out your skills if there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer. The soft skills are not about right and wrong. It's more about understanding who you are. How will you come into the team and fit? What will what will be like your style coming into your next role? So if you haven't seen these, just be kind of prepared that these are being adopted by a lot more companies to help them flush out who has the qualifications for the job, especially the technical and the aptitude. The qualifications are what they're trying to flush out more than anything. And we're seeing that earlier in the process. Now, when you are interviewing, what should you be aware of that the interviewer is really paying attention to? So I'm going to break this down to what I call CASE, company fit, attitude, skills, and EQ. So when you're thinking, what are these hiring managers and HR professionals looking for? Let's start with company fit. They're looking for how well you kind of fit into the culture of the organization. They're listening for your communication style, how well they think you're going to collaborate with people, how you might contribute to the teams and the organization, and they're listening for your confidence. So Liz and I talk about this a lot when we are coaching people on interviewing, that a lot of times going in and into the interview and asking questions, answering questions, and sort of how you show up in the confidence, like how you kind of appear on screen is just as important as anything else. But it also, your confidence lends to how you communicate and you collaborate and you contribute. And so they're really kind of assessing that. I think the big one that people don't always take into account, though, is attitude. And that is that when companies are interviewing you, they're listening for your attitude. How engaged are you? How much will you perhaps take initiative? Are you curious? I always tell people, especially I told my kids, you cannot teach curiosity, but you can show curiosity. And curiosity and initiative often go together. And it's one of the biggest things that companies are listening for right now. Are you going to come in and be curious, ask questions, take things to the next level, maybe do things a little bit beyond your job, showing that initiative? Can you self-manage yourself as well? Do you need to have just that checklist of things to do? Probably in the beginning for a lot of you, yeah, that's exactly what you need. But down the line, are you able to self-manage? So some of their questions might be around that self-management. They're listening for kind of like your mindset. How do you think? How do you approach things? How do you work with others? Now, of course, there's skills, but I'm going to be honest, company fit and attitude can actually trump the skills sometimes. I've seen it in all my years that I was a recruiter. So many of you know I was a recruiter for over 20 years. And I've certainly seen it as a coach where sometimes people get hired. They don't always check all the boxes on job knowledge, digital fluency, like knowing all the systems, industry acumen. They don't always have all of that, but they really fit in great with the company and they have the right attitude, and the company believes that they can grow and develop with them. I do believe that under skills also, though, does come in that leadership mindset. And be aware, leadership doesn't mean management. Leadership means, do you show up as somebody who is involved and is working with others? Leaders are not titles. Leaders are those who show up and they try new things and they ask really good questions and they help other people and they want to take an approach to the team of making them better. Now, management experience could come into it, but I just want to point out leadership and management are different. I think management experience for those roles that require that, yeah, that's going to be important. And then the last one in this case idea is the EQ, your self-awareness, your empathy, your feedback response. That's why you get a lot of questions in the interview process about how you handled problems with people, or how you took feedback from your last boss, or what you did with maybe negative information. They're going to ask about that feedback response more to see, do you take that information and learn from it, grow from it? Does it help you progress in your career? And then, of course, your relationship, how you build the relationships, your relationship skills when you first get into the job and you're working with your team, you're working with your boss, you're working with other people in the organization. So think of case when you're going into an interview that these are the top things that companies are looking for. Now, that's not to say the hard skills and soft skills don't pop up, because they do, and you need to show some of these. So, not trying to intimidate anybody who's like, interviewing is the hardest thing that I do. I think the preparation and practice helps you to be better in interviews, and that's part of why we're doing this today, so that you have this information up front, so that you feel empowered to know what you should showcase when you meet with people. So the hard skills that they're always looking for is going to be those job specific tools, your industry knowledge, just digital literacy, being able to comfortably learn new systems and processes and technological tools. Almost every job has elements of project management, which also leads into problem solving. Some of them also incorporate business analysis. And then, Liz, I did this just for you, writing skills, because Liz is a professional writer, and we always talk about how writing skills are so important, and sometimes people overlook them, but writing skills can really make a difference as well. Soft skills. These are the things where, when you are talking in the interview about how you handle the situation, you can showcase how you communicate and collaborate, your sense of ideation, coming up with new ideas and sharing like different approaches to things, your diplomacy with people, how you influence others, how you resolve conflicts, your time management skills, just showing, again, that sense of curiosity and initiative. All of these you want to kind of think of when you're thinking ahead and you're preparing for your next interview. How can I showcase some of these things? And let me just, on a side note, sort of put a plug out there that Liz and I have a ton of different tools to help you research for your next interview, to plan for your each conversation, and for every step of the way. So, come to us if you need extra help in that. Now, standing out in the interview, I always have 3 things that I talk with my clients about that I want to showcase here, because I think that these are the 3 things that make a difference from candidate to candidate. Number 1, reflection. So when you are talking in an interview about your story, so you're talking about that situation where you handled a problem with a client and, how you brought the team together and what your steps were to resolve that. I think the biggest thing in answering questions after you go through that STAR method, which many of you know, a situation, task, your actions, and your result, we put a second R onto that, and that is reflection. For me personally, in all the years that I've interviewed people, and I've interviewed thousands of people over the years, I think what people do right and to help them stand out is when they follow that result of whatever that situation is that they're talking about with what did they learn? What were their biggest takeaways? What would they do differently if they could? What do they wish they could have had? Maybe it was more time, more money, more resources, a different system. It could be anything. And then you can also weave in like what you look forward to. So when you're reflecting, you can say something like, I really wish that we had had more time, because if we'd had more time on that problem, we would have done this and this other thing and this third thing. Or if we'd had more people, we could have jumped into this other thing. But what did you learn? What was your takeaway? How did you maybe make things better? And then I think you can weave into, when specifically you're in an interview, something about that company you're talking to, about something you look forward to doing with them. So if you could tie all that together and say, hey, at your company, what interests me is that I know you're using this product or you use this system, and I'm really excited to use that because I know it has the capabilities of doing these other things. And had I had that maybe at my last role, or when I was handling that situation, it would have made a big difference. So reflection is huge in helping you stand out in an interview. It gives the interviewer insight into who you are and how you think and how you show up. So don't overlook that. It's one of my big sort of secret sauce things when you interview. Now, the next one is asking really good questions. I'll be honest, I think this is where people struggle the most, because people are afraid to ask a really targeted question. They're afraid that they're going to maybe sort of, jump too far ahead. But I think that there are stages, there are questions that you ask at sort of different stages. But I don't want you to ever ask that softball question about like, what are next steps in the interview? If you have one question to ask and that's your question, I think you're missing it. Instead, I want you to show curiosity. Ask questions about KPIs. Ask questions about what's being measured in that job. Ask questions about the resource gaps, like what's missing here? What do you need on your team that you don't have right now? What are you finding with your systems that is holding you back from doing something? So those resource gaps can be a really great way of understanding what you're getting into, as well as letting them know that you're thinking ahead to what it's going to be like to work there. You can ask about customer challenges. You can ask about process bottlenecks. What is happening in in the workflow of things that is creating challenges for the team? So ask really good questions when you're in an interview, realizing you might come in with 10 questions. As a matter of fact, I always recommend that people have about 10 questions ready to go, because some of those questions will just get naturally answered in the interview. And so you may need a few more. But if you get to some stage in the interview, usually towards the end, and they say, do you have any questions? You really want to have some good questions, and don't let them be softball questions. Don't ask softball questions like, what's next? Ask questions that show that you're thinking like, I'm in the job. Almost think ahead. Like, what questions would I be asking my first week in this job that I would need to know so that I would be successful? Don't wait for the first week. Ask it at some point in the interview process. The last thing is connecting. In the interview, it is imperative that you do everything you can to connect with the person. Try to find common ground. Now, sometimes this is as simple as looking at their LinkedIn profile and realizing that you went to the same college, or you both volunteer for the same thing. You could Google them. I usually do recommend Googling, but you don't want to seem creepy if you found out that like they ran a marathon last year and what their time was. So, you might mention like, hey, I noticed that you're a runner and I'm a runner. If you can find things like that, that's great. But it may also be about that career trajectory. Maybe they have done or they are doing something that you've done in your career as well. Find common ground around business goals. Like what do they want? They're going to ask you, what do you want to do in the future? Don't be afraid to come back to them and say, hey, I love that I've been able to talk about what I want to do in the future, but where do you see yourself going from here? What do you want to do next? What do you need to have on this team that's going to help you advance your career? You could ask questions around that. And of course, again, personal history or interests is always kind of a fun one to kind of just like connect on a personal side. So I want to leave you with one sort of last thing, because this comes up in a lot of conversations that I hear coaches having around what's most important. And so I want to point out, in today's market, companies are hiring people who are highly skilled over the people who are generalists. And I hear a lot of people who are in a job search who say, I want to be able to showcase that I can do all of these different things. And I want to caution you a bit about being too spread out and saying that you can't do those things. Companies are hiring for a specific job, for somebody who can do that one thing. And you want to focus on being highly skilled in that area. If you're saying, well, I've done some of that, but I've done all of these other things, you may dilute showing that you're highly skilled. So being highly skilled is number one. Now, that said, replace the generalist with adaptability. So adaptability, meaning that you can be agile, you can try new things, you can be highly skilled in one area, but yeah, you can pinch hit in something else, or you've got your radar up in other areas. Instead of being a generalist, show that you are highly skilled and you are adaptable. And I want you to also remember that adaptability can sometimes, be more important than having a very specific career ladder. So for you going forward, realize that adaptability can actually help you build your career in different directions in a very positive way. Instead of following a very specific path, which is kind of how a lot of us were sort of raised and brought into the work world to think we needed to be, that we need to follow this one path. That adaptability can just mean great things for you in your career, because you can take on new projects and sometimes go in a new direction that's really exciting and rewarding. And then, very importantly, work ethic today is being judged a lot more than raw talent. Raw talent is important, but work ethic is what is being listened to a lot in the interview process. So you want to showcase, as you're talking about your stories, your work ethic, your willingness to show up and be helpful, and not just punch in and punch out. The work ethic is what's really kind of being tested a lot, especially by the senior level. They're looking at that. They want raw talent, but they will not sacrifice raw talent for work ethic. Work ethic is most important. Last thing, remember that the interview is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You have to control what you're saying to yourself. So manage your mindset. Use your time really wisely in your job search. Keep that inner voice positive and supportive. What you say to yourself makes all the difference in the world. If you are around people who are negative, go push them aside. Go to people who are more positive. It makes a big difference. Also, very importantly, if you've gone through interviews and you haven't gotten the job and you're frustrated by that, I want you to remind yourself, past results don't mean your future results. So just because you didn't do well in one interview doesn't mean you're not going to just knock it out of the ballpark in the next one. Just because you didn't get that one job doesn't mean that the next one isn't going to come through with an offer. So don't sort of catastrophize what's happened in the past and make that like what you believe is your true story. And then finally, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Even when you're interviewing, keep going, keep interviewing, keep getting in front of companies. Remember, the quality over quantity is so important, that you are not scattershot applying, but you are looking for the ones that are really right for you. And if you had to choose how you spent your time in your job search process, connecting with people over applying online is so much more important. Whether that's LinkedIn or networking, just meeting people, it's the people connections that are really going to matter and help you move forward. So if you need more job search support, we want to let you know that we have created an online community. We have 3 levels. We have a free version, which is Ignite. That's what we call it. And so if you want to just join into our community, where you'll have access to a lot of different resources and weekly coaching calls with Liz and me, please join in. We have another level called Thrive, which is really for the job seeker, where you get access to all of our tools and resources for jobs, for your job search, interviewing, LinkedIn, networking, resumes, all of that. And so that is the next level, which is a subscription model for $199 a month. And then we have Accelerate, which is more for that ongoing, like keeping you engaged with our community, but giving you access to more resources. That's our Accelerate for only $79 a month. So if you need help, please join our community. Let us help you. You can also go to our website and learn more about us. You can go to our YouTube and see all of our prior Just Ask Julia calls. They're all on our YouTube channel. So go check that out. So that is it for today's topic. If you are watching this live, then we're going to start the Q&A session momentarily. For those of you who are watching the replay, thank you for tuning in. You can click the link in the description to sign up for future Just Ask Julia sessions.